Had to do a quick intro to this week's video because it's been so long since we have posted, but it's not because we haven't been busy. Dad's been traveling, headed out to Compton. We just got done with CTAS. We talk about that a little in this video. And we've been busy. I mean, we got a new tab design that we're working on that should be releasing soon. I think it's going to be a real winner, but I apologize about the long delay. We'll try not to do that again. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, well, welcome back. It's been a couple months since we've done this, but for good reason, for some good reasons. You've been gone. You went out to Australia, New Zealand, did some archery clinics, came out to Wisconsin and visited me. And we did try to make a webcast happen while you were out here, but the fishing was kind of too good.
I know. We wanted to get Pete Akavazi on and talk about his relationship with the Winslow brothers and talk about that family and what great guys they are. And the fishing was just too good. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And that's a good story. I hope that we can get Pete and talk to him sometime, because the story of just how he built a friendship with the Wenzels is cool in its own right.
It is. And Paul Schaefer and some of the great, kind of like icons of the sport that he's been, friends with and involved with. I'm sure we'll get a good story or two out of Pete.
Yeah. We need to document all that stuff that we can.
Yeah.
So I figured we've got 2 videos to get through today, and I don't want to make this too long. We'll try to limit this as much as we can. So we're not going to do any questions today. We've got 2 videos at the end. You are leaving for Compton tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah. I will be a guest speaker for one of the dinners. I'll be doing a woman shooting clinic, a seminar, and then I will be doing 2 shooting clinics with 2 different groups of guys. So I've got a busy time ahead of me, and I'll get to shoot with a bunch of great people, no doubt.
Yeah. So we got to get through this. We took 2 months off. So we got to get this out before you leave.
I'll try to get a lot of video of what it's like at that Compton rendezvous. I bet you there's a lot of guys out east that they haven't seen it will probably be interested in going next year for sure.
Well,
she's got a lot of vendors, speakers, seminars, so it sounds like a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, I regret that I haven't made it to that. One of these years, we just got to meet out there. So anyways,
definitely.
So it's something that we always talk about that always comes up in the store are aiming methods. And you had said in the past that that's something that you wanted to talk about on one of these webcasts. So I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you. What particularly are you going to talk about?
So if you get a fellow that was like me, that was kind of an instinctive aimer all his life, and so he's kind of instinctive shooter, instinctive aimer, and really kind of never taught a shot process like the vast bulk of us, right?
Yeah, like everybody.
I never had. Every guy, almost every guy you meet. And then that guy will understand that he'd like to have a more accurate aim. He'd like, he hears about gap shooting. They talk about the accuracy and it's so much superior. And that fella tries it and he never has success. It's kind of like, it's a common thing said to me. He's like, I tried that once. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. And I know what the root cause of it, because before I had the knowledge I do, I tried it and like, oh, that just freaks me out. And there's just some simple explanations. It involves a little bit of brain function, and there's a why to it. But if anything, I'd like to explain what's going on to the guy that's tried that or wants to try it or has had no success with it, so that it's not you, so to speak. It's not you. There's another base of knowledge you have to have a little bit behind that to ever make that success.
So will you address, this is just my personal question I'm going to throw out at you. In the past, when I would try to aim with an arrow, I put rubber bands on my bow to see if I could get my elevation set.
Yeah.
None of that stuff seemed relevant to my aim at all. Actually, the aim always seemed like a little bit of a mystery to me. If I tried harder, it got worse. If I just kind of let it flow, it worked sometimes and it felt really good when it did. I will say though, that now I'm very tuned in to my arrow. I could use a pin now. Yeah. I don't know when that changed or what changed it. I mean, is that part of what you're going to, are you going to get into that at all? So I guess what I'm asking.
Yes, your question will definitely be answered. Some things got integrated. So let me just say this simply, like this would be the simple how, right? The simple how to a gap is simply knowing, when you're in holding position, and for a lot of us guys that were snap shooters, to actually pull back the arrow, anchor in, and actually aim and hold it on target while we were going to shoot was absolutely impossible. And I can explain a little bit what's going on there too. But anyway, when we're using a gap, all we're doing is setting a trajectory. All we're doing is setting the height of the arrow. Right now, within your holding position, if your string's in the middle of your eye, you can hold a vertical bow, and that arrow will hit along the line that the point is at. If you draw the bow and you've got a deeper anchor so that the string comes outside of your eye a little bit, then the arrow is going to be pitched to the left. And then in that case, we're going to have to cant the bow so that the arrow comes under the line of your eyesight. And that's what people have done, and they've not even known what they're doing. They've done that kind of intuitively. And so you see most traditional archers with a canted bow. Well, that cant just simply gets their eye over the arrow to the bullseye. And so that might be a modification from a vertical bow a lot of guys have to make. But other than that, what we're using with a gap is simply setting the trajectory, simply setting the height at which the arrow is going to hit. So what for me made it so easy is once I found that out, once I could actually hang on to the string and then produce an execution of a finish of the shot, which was a really struggle at first. But once I could do that, and then I could use a gap because I would simply, say the gap is a foot below the bullseye. I have to put the tip a foot below the bullseye to hit a bullseye. I would simply come into holding. I'd put that tip, a foot below the bullseye. Let's see if it was just like under me somewhere. And then I would look at the spot I wanted to hit. And then it felt like my instinctive aim. But what guys get hung up on, and part of the reason that they can't do it is simply they can't hang on to the string and look at a sight picture, because as soon as they see aim, the shot goes off. But if that's the level, when they've lost control of the string hand in that manner, a gap will never work because they can't hang on to the string long enough to actually, settle on an aim. Yep, right there. They don't get that right there moment. As soon as their brain sees aim, the string is gone. So next level of control, I can hang on to the string. I can put the point where it needs to be. And then when I finally got to that level of control, then I was just setting the height of the impact. And I would set the height of the impact, and then could look at the bullseye and then execute the finish, and dang if it didn't hit the bullseye.
So I'm going to interrupt you really fast. Your gap does not incorporate any left, right?
That's kind of what I addressed at first. If the string is in front of your eye, then you're probably going to hit right down the middle.
Okay.
Because your eye's automatically then looking straight down the arrow. But the problem with most people don't have dimensions where their anchor is short, which puts the string in front of their eye when they have a side of face anchor. Most people's dimensions will have an anchor like on their cheekbone somewhere where that string is going to be to the side of their eye. Can I point a bow at you and kind of show you what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, that's exactly why I asked, because if I try to gap, my point is not directly in line with the target.
Correct. So what's happening to you with your vertical bows is here, let me show you. So what's going on is when you come into your holding position at your anchor, if you're like me, let me get a camera angle that'll work. If you can see, maybe that's a better angle right there. If you can see, that string is on the right side of my eye. Let me move it to this side. Is that a better view to show that the string is not bisecting my eye? But this is a good holding position because from here, you can see my elbow is not sticking out here. It's way behind the string, right? So if I shorten my draw length and come up to here, my string is in front of my eye. Can you see that now?
Yep.
But also look, let me get the angle right. Look where my elbow is. That's outside the string. A lot of squish room in here. If I come back to where I can really get into my back and then get my elbow behind the string, or maybe even inside the You'll see the string's on the right side of my eye now. Can you see that angle,
Yeah.
Tommy?
Yeah, it looks good.
That means that the arrow tip is going to be pointed to the left
Yep.
of the true bullseye. And so when people try to adjust for that, and this was the whole subject of face scrapes, we're going to post that video I did for Instagram on face scrapes. So what they'll do instead is they'll lean their face into the string. Let me get an angle. They'll lean their face in so they get that string in front of their eye, but then they'll get impact with their cheek or their nose.
Yep.
Trying to get the eye arrow bullseye alignment. And so it's a simple fix not to do that, because if that string is out to the right side of your eye, let me get my angles correct. I'm kind of pointing it at a camera. All I have to do is take the head and the bow together over like this. Get it on the other side of my leg. There's my angle. Okay. All I got to do is take you see how the shelf of the bow starts coming in line. So you see the shelf of the bow is kind of under my chin right now. But if I cant the head and the bow together, look how the shelf comes over and under my eye. You see that, Tommy?
Yeah, I can see what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So say the arrow's pointing to the left here. I can tip this over enough until that finger is in line with my eye. If you can see,
Gotcha.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that clears it up, because you always told me to cant more, and so I would tip my bow over more.
Right,
But
to
it
take
didn't.
care
I
of those
wasn't.
side misses, right?
Yeah, but I wasn't going along with the bow.
Yeah, and that's what you need to do, because here's the pivot point. So that bow's going to cant from this pivot point, but the arrow's sitting up here. So as that bow cants, it's taking the arrow to the right.
Yep, I see that. Yep.
And it comes in take it to the right, even though the head and the bow are moving together, it still takes the arrow tip to the right, and the arrow tip will come in alignment with the eye, even when you move the head and the bow together, because it's here again, that pivot point's above and it just comes into alignment with your eye. So then now you have eye along the arrow to the bullseye alignment. And now
Gotcha.
you don't have to worry about your lefts and rights anymore.
All right.
Now it's a matter of setting the height with your gap.
Got it. I took you off track. I appreciate that, because that was a question that I just had for myself. So I'll let you keep going.
No, I think it's a good question for everybody else too. So, at first we need to have a process of shooting the bow the same way every time. So when we do lessons, it's always process oriented first. Let's replicate a holding position. We've got lots of information out there, and we'll put more out there for that. Replicate a holding position. That's kind of the first job. And there's several components to building this holding position. So let's just call that our first job. Finish the holding position, done. And then job number 2 would be to put an aim on the target. Done does not mean shoot. And then the third job in that process is we need to create a release. We need to have linear pressure on the string, which can only be done very precisely through back tension. So what we're going to do is while we're building our holding position, we're going to rotate this elbow to an end of range of movement. It's a movement called transfer to holding. It's going to fully engage the back muscles. I hope I can show you my scapular movement. So here's my shoulder blade. When I do that transfer to hold movement, the shoulder blade is going to come in and engage to its furthest place towards the spine. Can you see that movement, Tommy?
So would you show the difference between just a shoulder pull and your whole scapula moving back?
Yeah.
Because that difference is pretty stark.
Yeah. So a shoulder pull is doing it basically the intuitive way. If I'm shooting that way, I'm going to pull that way, right? So if I'm drawing the bow, I'm just going to pull straight back, and that elbow is going to just come in a line straight back. And usually it's going to come in here, like I'm trying to find a place around my face to an anchor. So it's just linear movement. But what happens with that linear movement is the wrist has to bend in. Let's do it like if I'm shooting uphill, even if I start with a straight wrist, that wrist has to bend in and the elbow has to go out. And so we're kind of all out of alignment, right? Whereas a linear draw or an angular draw, I'm gonna going to take the string hand. I'm just going to pull it out here about 3 inches. I'm going to do it with the bow and arrow because I think it's a better demonstration.
Well, what I wanted you to demonstrate was the scapular movement, because that's what you were talking about.
Gotcha.
We'll get to all of this when we get to that video. It's actually a perfect segue into that video.
Yeah.
Because you just showed how much your shoulder blade moves.
Right. So if I was to turn my back on this camera and I was to draw this bow in a linear fashion, what you'll see is not much is moving here, the shoulder blade area. If I'm really using a good angular draw, I'm going to lead with the shoulder and watch my shoulder blade move. Can you see that good on the video we're doing?
Yep. Now do it again with just the shoulder pull.
So any halfway decent coach, even with a shoulder pull, is going to try to tell the student to move the shoulder back so we get some back muscles doing the work as opposed to just shoulder muscles doing the work. But the angular draw that we teach is just going to have us take the string outside of the line of the bow 2 or 3 inches. And so we're going to create an angle so we can really just shove that shoulder back. And that string hand is going to move in a straight line from a little outside, back to the inside like this.
Yep. So I got you way off of the aiming.
As opposed to that. There's a good
aiming
angle on it. This would be more linear. This would be more angular.
Can you hear me at all?
I got you real loud and clear. Yeah.
Okay. I took you way off of the aiming subject. So if
that's fine.
You could get back to that, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. And I always chase down these rabbit holes. You can lead me and I'll just go off the rails. That's kind of my nature. But so anyways, once we develop that holding position, we get in a good alignment. When we're using a gap, once we got that left and right issue squared away, we just set the, if it's a foot below the target to hit the bullseye, we set the arrow a foot below the bullseye, and then we just simply look at the bullseye. And at this point, the analogy of driving the car that I use all the time, we just got to look at the bullseye. And that's kind of like looking down the middle of the lane when you're driving a car. And then all these little micro adjustments in the wheel are made at the subconscious level. The brain will just keep that arrow point a foot below the target. You're just kind of looking down the middle of the lane and let the brain drive the car. It'll maintain there just fine for at least 3 full seconds. And then what we do is then we're going to transition our mind into executing a follow through. We're going to create tension on the string through the string to a follow through position over the shoulder. That separation of the jobs, so to speak. So the aim being the second job and the last job being increasing tension on the string that goes through to a follow through is the third job.
Mind if I interrupt you one more time?
That little sequence will create, but I just want to say that little sequence will create great accuracy for people if they can separate their mind from the aim. Go ahead with your question. And
the reason I wanted to interrupt you there is because when you're talking about aiming and you're getting into back tension. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, I didn't realize why you would talk about back tension when you're aiming. But I understand now, because I used to think that I had a problem with aiming, right? But I could point at something, I can point straight at something. Mm-hmm. The problem that I had was that I was pulling it off of aim because I wasn't getting a good release. Right. And so you had mentioned putting a grip trigger on my bow kind of fixed my aiming issues, and it kind of did, but it wasn't because I learned an aiming method.
No.
You just point at the target.
It was
because I wasn't pulling it off the target with my release. And so pairing back tension with aiming, I mean, it is imperative. Those two things are absolutely linked.
Okay, but the conscious control can only go to one thing. The aim is what we call a monitoring function of the brain.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. If I tried to aim really hard, it got totally screwed up. Just let the aim happen on its own and put the conscious mind into back tension.
Correct.
And all of a sudden I can aim when I'm not thinking about aiming.
Correct. The analogy I use all the time is the driving a car analogy. When you're very first learning to drive, you're in the projectile and it needs to go over here in the lane, right? And so you got to do this. So consciously, you press on the gas and like, oh, you turn the wheel consciously, gets to the middle, you try to catch it, you're a little late, oh, got to go back that way, and you turn the wheel and you go back that way. Anyways, you're constantly reacting to the car being off the bullseye, off the middle of the lane. You are looking at the middle of the lane. You're giving a place that you want to go to, visual proprioception, seen and felt position, told you weren't in the middle, and then you consciously, I got to go that way or I got to go that way. But then as the brain made these connections, these neural mental connections between what you were doing consciously and what you were seeing, right? It made a link between what you were seeing on or off center and what you had to do. So every time it saw it this way, you had to go that, and it made a link there.
So is it
more
fair
out of the
to say
reflexive part of your brain? And then what happened was, then those corrections were made at the subconscious level because that neural link had been made. Now, a subconscious reaction happens in plus or minus 60 milliseconds. A conscious reaction, oops, I got to turn left. A conscious reaction happens in over 1200 milliseconds. So once the subconscious, the limbic part, the reactive part of your brain started to make those corrections for you at the subconscious level, the corrections were made right away. So inertia and time didn't take the car further out of the lane because that correction was made in 60 milliseconds. And then when it went the other way, it didn't take 1200 milliseconds to get it going the other way, and the inertia and the movement and the time that it had to move out of the middle. And so those corrections are made much quicker at a much micro level, much higher micro level. Same happens with an aim. At first, we all have to consciously aim because we've never done it before. So we put that tip where it needs to be, where we look at the thing and we notice it's off to the right, so we shift it to the left, and it goes high and we shift it low. We're making a conscious correction to the input, right? And then that reflexive part of the brain is picking up a connection between and it sees what we need to do. Every time it's off to the left, we push it to the right. And then that connection at the brain level is made between those acts. And then it's done for us at the subconscious level, the reflexive part of our brain, right? Well, once we allow the brain to do that, once we've built that little connection into our brain, we just use it, because now all we need to do is look at the bullseye. All we need to do when driving a car is look at the middle of the lane, and all those little steering adjustments are made for us, which allows, because it's at the subconscious level, which allows the conscious mind to shift to whoever we want it to. So when you're first driving, it's like, don't, I'm concentrating here, don't talk to me. But then once that little steering happens at the reflexive level of your brain, then you can engage in a very deep conversation with your passenger. Then your brain can go into deep thoughts about anything else, because you're looking at the middle of the lane and the brain is making those corrections to the steering automatically for you at the reflexive part of your brain. And they do it much quicker, so the car is much more stable down the middle. Same with aim. It doesn't take your brain long to, once you set an aim and just look at it, for the brain at the reflexive level to keep moving it back through the center of the bullseye. At which point you can shift into conscious control of keeping into your press, keep pressing until you get the click from a clicker or a grip trigger or a feather touch or something else that triggers the release. One step deeper, the brain also recognizes a connection. The first few shots you made with a click are click release, and then click release, a conscious release that you're directing after the click happens. Just like aiming, a neural connection is made between what's coming in through your senses. This time it's audio, could be tactile. And then the brain, on a reflexive manner, connects a subconscious release, or it generates a subconscious release linked to the click now. That's when you start getting accurate. So the aim of the bow at first is very conscious, and then it turns into reflexive activity. All you got to do is look at the spot, at which point we can shift into either a triggerless release, which is increasing tension through the string to a follow through, or we're going to use a triggered release like a clicker or a grip trigger, or keep pulling till a feather touches our cheek or our nose, which in time, with a few repetitions, also turns into reflexive activity. The conscious action at the end of every shot is the increasing pressure on the string that we're creating. We want to create it through back tension so we have a proper release, and we do it at the right angle, so we get this rotating elbow and this linear movement at the hand that lands over your shoulder. We want it to be done that way, because if we do it in the intuitive way, like pull straight back, there's an end of range of movement here. And so when the string goes away, it slams into that end of range of movement and causes an impingement in your shoulder. So there's just all these little elements along the way that you need to kind of understand and have a building block process on. And so I don't want to overcomplicate it, which I could do easily, but if you'll just realize like the how to is simply build your holding position, move the arrow to your gap, or get a moment, whatever aiming method you're using, that says, yep, right there. Then let the bow settle, let the subconscious steer the car into the middle of the lane and let it settle. And then if you've got a trigger or a clicker, just keep pressing, keep adding string tension. That's what your conscious mind is focused on. Keep pulling, keep pressing, click, boom, the shot breaks. If it's untriggered, where it's a pressure through the string to your follow through, which also creates a subconscious release. So it's very intentional, very consciously controlled at the end. But before you know these things about separating the jobs, separating like the job of aiming and then the job of finishing your shot are two separate things, you'll never have success with, especially a very specific aiming method like a gap or a point on. And that's where people get in trouble, because they want to reflex. They want to shoot right on the aim. The aim when you're using the arrow tip gets very specific. So we all tend to want to catch that aim. And then when we try to catch that aim, then we get a body reaction to that shock of the bow, because the bow isn't going off as a surprise anymore. The release isn't at the subconscious level anymore. Does that make sense, Tommy? It got a little deep there. I hope everybody can stay with that.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing to me is that the aim is to fix your aim is to fix your release. I don't know how else to say it.
You're right,
You
because what
focus on
happens,
cleaning up your release, all of a sudden you can aim.
right? So let me put it another way. In the how to, don't try to consciously blend the release and the aim together. Two separate jobs. Aim, you're done with it. Just look at it. And then move your mind to the second job, which is just, if you want to really simplify it, just pull through. Don't open your fingers. Just pull through. But we want to pull through in the right manner.
Yeah, and I like that wording better, that they're two separate jobs.
Separate jobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two separate
Yeah.
activities. We consciously aim it first. We put the arrow where it needs to be. Look at the bullseye. Done. Just look at it. We've steered the car to the middle of the road. Now just look at the middle of the road, right? That aiming job is done. It does not mean shoot. And then we consciously shoot in the correct manner. If it's untriggered, it's just pressure, increasing string pressure through back tension. And so a lot of times I call it increasing tension, but what I mean is actually increasing pressure on the string, to be more clear so we don't confuse the word tension. Just keep into that tension through the string to your follow through. If it's using a clicker or another device that requires more string tension or string movement, like a limb mounted clicker actually requires some string movement. So it's just stopping short of your, kind of a little touch short of your full position, and then creating movement. You're pulling the string back, that little thing bends, it finally clicks, keep pressing, click, boom, and the shot will break at the subconscious level. Does that make sense? So when we simplify it into the how, it gets a lot easier. I tend, anybody analytical will want to know the why. And then the story about brain functions gets way deeper, and I'll do that in a lot of my half day or full day clinics if you really want to geek out about it. But it kind of complicates the issue on a short seminar like we're doing here, or a short webcast like we're doing here. But just what I described is these three jobs can transform somebody's shooting. The problem is, for guys like me that was always focused on the aim, my conscious control was on the aim. So I'd be pulling back, my brain would see aim, and the shot would break at the subconscious level because those two got linked.
Well, and that's what I was just going to say, is
So
that
then
when your aim is set, it doesn't mean shoot.
Yes, correct.
And
And a lot of
that's a
guys
big part of it.
It's the biggest part of it, honestly. What kind of got me to an anchor first of all, and so just a little how it happened for me at first, was when I learned archery in a proper manner at the first certified instructors course. It's a shot sequence, so you always had something consciously to do that didn't mean shoot, and it went right up into here. So it was like, get your sense set, nock an arrow, set a specific hook, set a grip on the bow. It was a sequence of thoughts. Raise the bow, draw and find your anchor, and wheel your elbow around the corner into transfer. All of a sudden, I'm in holding position. None of those activities meant shoot. And then aim, and then pull through, basically. So that little sequence got me out of, quote, the target panic or the loss of control, because I was consciously following these steps. Now, of course, for me, because my brain had always at a neural level connected the release to the aim, it became problematic again, where I'd get into holding, aim, oop, shoot. As soon as my brain saw aim, it went. And then there was a whole nother conscious override that had to occur to get me to the place where I could aim, don't shoot, and then press through. So then that was a big extra chore. And there's an explanation on that, but I don't know if we want to go into that today or not, Tommy.
No, we got to keep moving because there are a couple of videos that I want to go through, but I do want to share one story. When I was in high school and we were going up to Fort Collins, you were kind of torn between, should I work on my shot and try to correct my bad habits, or should I just shoot to win? And the debate that was, basically, should I snap shoot and just let go of the arrow because you were hitting the target pretty well doing that, or should you try to get over your snap shooting?
Right.
And I think you shot to win and did really well, but
it was at that point where I could get to anchor. And so I just had to fight for a half a second and let it go. And, it was kind of like, I'm in there, pull through. And I could shoot pretty well. Instead of working on my shot would be, no, let it settle. There it is. Now press through. That's working on your shot. And I didn't want to go there because I would freak out and punch out on the aim, and all kinds of bad stuff happened then.
Knowing that these are two separate things, that the aim is not released or is not linked to the release, is monumental. We didn't know that back then. I know you didn't know that back then. It would have made it a lot easier if you had just known that those are two separate jobs and that you need to kind of switch your mind.
But our generation was taught to burn a hole in the target, pick the hair. All of our conscious control went to aiming. And once we developed some kind of shot, that could go automatic. But then it got from, anchor, aim, release, and then it went to aim, release, and then went to aim, release, and then aim, release, and then they got linked again, and that was done. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's I'm gonna let you go grab a drink real fast. So I'm gonna play a quick commercial from our sponsor, and then we'll come back and watch a couple of these videos. And then I think that's about all the time that we have today.
Sounds good.
All right.
I'm Tom Clum, owner and founder of Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear. Welcome to our shop. Come browse probably the world's largest inventory of traditional bows in one store. We probably have 400 to 600 bows in here at any given time. Or you can set yourself up with a compound bow. We have just about every major brand. We welcome all experience levels. I don't care if it's your first bow or you're an old timer and you might be buying your 30th bow. We can serve your needs. Everybody that works here is a USA certified archery coach. One of the things we like is value added, so if you need some improvement on your shot, please ask us for that. We are the home of solid archery mechanics, cutthroat broadheads, and we have our own leather line that we manufacture in-house, like arm guards and quivers. We also offer a large line of different hunting products like Sitka clothing, high-end backpacks, high-end boots, optics including Swarovski. We've got a great knife shop here, and we're an elite dealer for Benchmade. Come check us out in Wheat Ridge, Colorado for all of your archery and hunting needs.
Still got to laugh at how bad I am
every time. Yep. All right, so I've got two different videos here. I'm going to play one from Douglas first, and I'll just read you what he wrote. He said, "You had asked for videos of archery shooting. Here's a clip of me shooting. I haven't shot very much lately, and my release and back tension have completely degraded to a static one. I need to get to work with the stretch band and review the solid archery mechanics. I think I need to slow everything down too." And he mentions that you can hear him miss a shot in here. And he said it's embarrassing, but I want to hold myself accountable. I appreciate that he sent us this video because I mean, you're putting yourself out there.
You bet. And that's awesome, because what he's suffering from, you gave me a little preview of that. And what was cool about it, this subject of aiming and the guys that can't aim, this guy's suffering from the same thing. We'll go over it and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's suffering from what we all have. And we didn't do this on purpose, but a lot of the stuff with the linear draw and the angular draw is a good example in this video. So let me pull this up here. All right, so there's I think 3 or 4 different shots. So I'm just going to let this play and let you tell me when to stop.
Okay, I'll watch a few. So this fella is not far off, man. So it's mostly in mental management to get his accuracy back. Yes, are there some form tunes? Yeah, there's a couple. He's not far. He hits an anchor, and then you'll see the action of releasing the arrows where he gets in trouble right there. It's a little bit of a collapse on that one. Yeah, he's kind of smiling. That was probably a really bad result. You could see the string hand kind of fade before it came back. So he's most of the way there. He is getting an anchor. He's getting a holding position. He's getting an aim. But then the separation kind of stopped right there. Boom.
So what would I mean? We don't have a huge video here. Or I shouldn't say we don't have a very long video here, but is there any quick advice that you could give to him? Because I think his shot looks about the same as 90% of everybody else out there.
Well, actually, it's much better than at least 80% of the guys, because 80% of the guys can't anchor and settle on any kind of an aim. So he's
very true.
He's really moving along pretty well. He's close. He's close. Okay, I can talk about what he needs to do from here. All right. As far as there's 2 things. And is he kind of quoting, "I'm not very accurate at this time"? Does he kind of have any comments on his accuracy at all?
No, he didn't. He said that he missed once because he forgot to set his gap.
Okay. So he may or may not be accurate with that shot, but it's missing some really important elements. I'm going to just grab my 7-pound bow that I can dry fire real quick and kind of set an example here. So if you'll notice, this fella, he does a pretty good job of settling into an anchor. So he's anchored. Let me take my glasses off. So he is anchored, and you can see him settle on an aim. That's fantastic. That is 90% of the battle right now. So he is either like settling on the aim and then trying to catch the aim. I can't tell for sure. I'd have to ask him these questions. Or it's just the direction of movement or pressure on it. He's kind of lost his back tension. He's kind of, the shot will break and the hand will come back maybe 2 or 3 inches. So it'll look like this. It'll just kind of pop, and that elbow kind of jams to a stop, which potentially could lead into some shoulder problems. What he's forgotten to do is, once he settles into his holding position, he's forgotten to drive his tension in a manner using his back muscles, in a manner where the direction of pressure and movement is behind him. So he's kind of pulling with his shoulder. It's just slamming to a stop like this. It's kind of boom, as opposed to maintaining his hook. So if he's got the solid program, he'll be able to review this data as far as using his back tension, as far as producing a transferal hold before the aim. So I want him to come into anchor and then transfer to hold. And then once he settles on the aim, just look at it, and the bow's settled on his gap. And then he's going to press. This sets the direction to a follow through. So he's going to press tension in that direction, but there's no movement. He's going to increase the pressure on the string and then through to a follow-through position. So he's either, kind of blending the aim and the release a little bit, sees the aim now, which is kind of adds the link brace on a lot of shots, and which would describe those unexplained misses because the aim is good, but he's not producing that clean release because he's not treating it like a specific next job to do. The next job to do is after that bow is settled, we're just going to increase that back tension, which is going to increase the tension on the string, and we're going to press that tension through to our follow through position. And that job is very intentional, and because it's very intentional, that would default to conscious control. So he's completely separated off the aim as any kind of mental input to it. Let the limbic system, let the reflexive system handle it. Just look at it, and then consciously, intentionally press through to your follow through. So go back to your modules on back tension and that whole follow through sequence, that expansion to follow through. That's where his mind needs to go after that aim is settled. He needs to develop confidence that the aim will stay there just looking at it, and then really review finishing this thing properly. When he does that, he's also going to gain 4 to 6 feet a second too. So technically, other things where he's gone to a linear draw, and this is in the solid course too, he's gone into a linear draw, so his elbow comes out as he's drawing, the wrist bends in as he's drawing, so he's getting kind of some angles, bad angles produced like this, as opposed to taking the string 2 or 3 inches out, maintaining the hook, and it's just slightly outward bending wrist position, and just taking that draw force line. I want you to review your draw force line in the solid, which is just bringing the string out 2 or 3 inches, and then leading with the shoulder, and then coming into holding position like that. So you get it up here, transfer the hold. He's very close to becoming a really good shooter. Just needs to review back tension. He needs to review the angular draw, but while he's drawing the bow, getting into his back right away, that will improve his holding position. I didn't see a specific transfer to hold movement. It's not a big movement. I didn't see it. That, getting into his back finally, and then pressing that back tension through the release. That's going to make all the difference in the world. And he's so close to that. He's really close to becoming a good shooter. At the moment, he's got pretty good mental control. He's hitting a holding position. You can see him settle on an aim. Now we have to shift to that last job, that increasing tension through the string to his follow through. That's what I'd have to say. And once he accomplishes that separation and that finish, look out. A whole bunch of really good shootings coming his way.
I would like to show, for the folks that don't know what a linear and an angular draw is, I'm going to show a couple of pictures.
That'd be great. Yeah, those ones from my Instagram feed. That's a good example. Yeah.
I don't know if they were on your Instagram feed or not.
Yeah, I do have a post on this.
So in this picture, the angular draw, you can see my mouse in this, right?
Wave it around a little bit. Yeah, I can see it on the second picture right around my wrist.
Yep, this bent wrist, and that was the biggest thing that I noticed with him, was that he was in this linear draw. You can see in this third picture here how the wrist is bent inward, and the elbow ends up.
Yeah, look at the line of the arrow, which is the red line, and there's
as opposed to the elbow ending up,
right
in this position. Can you get good back tension with a linear draw?
There's guys that do. Yeah, I've seen guys with linear draw that you can see their shoulder blade moving the entire draw, which is great. It's rare because it's hard for me. It's really hard to get in my back right away when that string hand is in line with the bow. Once I take that wrist out, just taking that hand out just a little bit and lining the form like that very first picture, see the red line, it represents the arrow. So the forearm in the arrow are in line on the angular draw. On the linear draw, like you have on the screen now, there's a break that the form comes to the left and then the arrow straight at the target. and then you raise the bow up to setup position, and there's an even more extreme angle between the forearm and the arrow. And so as you pull straight back, that angle gets worse. And then with the inward bending wrist, you take the elbow around the corner like to transfer the hold. Elbow is going to land outside the string with the inward bending wrist. All right, go ahead to angular draw. So as you progress through, I'll go talk through it again. So okay, so this is an angular draw. The arrow's going to, the forearm bones are going to kind of stay in alignment with the arrow the whole time. The elbow's pretty much behind the arrow virtually the whole time. And then with the outward bending wrists, the forearm bones take a different angle off of the wrist, and then the elbow can come inside the string, as you can see there on the very last position to the right, on the right side of your screen. So the second to the last picture would be at anchor, and the last picture would be after transfer to hold, rotating the elbow behind the string or inside the string.
Excellent. All right, here is another video. Let me jump to that one real fast. So this gentleman, his name is Eric, and he wanted to get your comments on this. He didn't say much about it. He does say that he had a micro collapse and he plucked his string a little bit. He was shooting a cutthroat 3-blade in this, and he hit the center of the target, which he shows at the end of the video, but I don't think I've got that whole thing here. So anyways, I'll let this one play, and I'll just let you comment on it.
Yeah, before you told me that the guy hit the center of the target, I think you'll remember me commenting after watching a few of these shots that I'll bet this guy is a very accurate shooter, because even though he starts with that inward bending wrist and fairly linear, let me look at how he draws the bow again. He's got a very straight wrist. Yeah, I'll look at it one more time as he draws the bow. Man, he ends up in a really nice holding position. You can see that wrist is straight or slightly outward bending. It looks from this angle like the elbow is really nicely behind the string. From this angle, from everything I can see, he's using his back to get into holding right there. From everything I see, he's got great alignment. He settles on the target. He has pressure through the string to a follow through of sorts. So, before you even told me that guy hit the bullseye, I said, I'll bet that guy's a really accurate shooter. So my only thing on this gentleman's shot is if you'll watch the follow through that happens. So when you're pressing tension on the string and move through the string, it's kind of like if we were playing tug of war and you're pulling really hard and I let go, you'd fall back. Well, when the direction of movement or tension is straight away from the bow, like the old days of power archery, it was push, pull. So we tried to get linear opposing movements that are all linear movements to and from the target, with basically pulling straight away from the target. But the problem with that is there's an end of range of motion in that direction. It's about right there. And so when we're in this tug of war and the string breaks through, boom, we slam into that end of range of motion. So my caution for that shooter there is that has the huge potential for an impingement. When that happens, you have the head of the upper arm bones, and it lays right under a bone called a chromium process. And there's a gap between the head of the humerus and that part that sticks off the scapula that goes over that bone. And so when that happens, when you slam into that scapula tips, and it can kind of tip right into the head of the humerus and kind of impacts or impinges on that chromium process. So it's some acromial gap right there, and there's tendons that run through, there's nerves that run through, there's tissue that runs in between that gap. And so when you slam to a stop like that, it crushes all of those tissues. And so typically what the manifestations are, it'll lead to a sore shoulder at first, and there's plenty of guys that will shoot through that discomfort and keep shooting, and then they get chronic inflammation, and then the chronic inflammation will cause a bone spur. And then that bone spur can eventually lacerate one of those tendons. There's plenty of guys that have been through that whole process. So a super fit guy, depending on his particular build, can get away with that A few can get away with it for virtually a lifetime because of the way their bones curve away or the way that gap settles. There's guys that once they go to a clicker and are actually pulling through the string and they're slamming into that, they won't last a week or two without a really sore shoulder. Even if they're fit, and there's everywhere in between. So my caution to that fellow there, if you're starting to notice some soreness here, that's where your problem's coming from. So the prior explanation when I was talking about the tension going this way, or pressing the arm straight behind them, or pressing the shoulder back, just the shoulder back to get through the string, press through. So we get what we want to see is a manifestation. We want to see, first of all, look at the elbow tip. It's going to slash around the corner. It's going to rotate. Now look at the hand. The hand is going to move in a very linear fashion along the face. That only happens when all the pressure is going straight behind you or in an angle this way. So that's the use of back tension for a back tension follow through. You're pressing through that range of motion right there. String hook should land pretty much over the shoulder. A barrel-chested guy is probably going to land a little in front of the shoulder. There's those round rib cages, big barrel-chested dudes. We don't quite stay as tight as other guys. People that are thinner and wider like you and I, Tommy, we have that big shoulder mobility so that thing can really stay tight. So that's what I'd have to say about that fella. I think he's probably a really fine shooter. I'd love to see him incorporate back tension and keep his shoulders safe from injury.
Excellent. Well, that was all I had today, unless there was anything else that you wanted to add to that.
No, I think, in a one session recording, it's some good information in mixed in with that. It's pretty good. We're going to be under 45 minutes, a nice, easy one for most people to listen to or watch. So, but some really valuable information for sure. Some like prime stuff mixed in here, like gotta have incorporated into your shot. A lot of people can do it from a video like this and really can incorporate a lot of these things. Some people need to get hands-on and get with me. I hope I'll be getting to share this in Michigan here, leaving for Michigan tomorrow for the big Compton event. I'll be doing a lady shooting seminar. I'll be doing a couple clinics with 2 different groups of guys, and I'm going to do a dinner speech. So anybody going, that I hope the guys there will introduce themselves. I get to meet a lot of nice people, from that end of the country. So I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, I got to throw out the shameless plug, because all of this information is available at shootsolid.com, the Solid Archery Mechanics course. It's all laid out in a step-by-step format. And so if you're interested in knowing more, it's at shootsolid.com. That is all I had planned.
Yeah, to speak more about that, there's a basics course, and it's just kind of like a 35-minute, 12 or 13 modules, hits all the highlights on all these positions with an aiming method. And so that's a great starter. That basics course is included with the main course. If you're digging into the main course and you're a newer shooter, I'd recommend going to the basics course first. It's sold on its own for $50, but the $200 course, it's included in. The $200, the main course is over 7 hours long, and it gets like an elite level execution. It's an entire very high level instructional series, but it allows you to kind of diagnose or understand things at a way deeper level if that's what you desire. So that's all I have to say about that. Yeah,
we've got a couple busy weeks coming up with Compton, and then we've got CTAS the week after that. So it's probably going to be a couple weeks before we're back here, but we'll do our best to get on here as often as we can.
Yeah, Tommy, let's do a lot of filming, and I'll try to do that at Compton and show them what CTAS is about, because I think if you've never seen that, for traditional guys, it is spectacular. It's in the middle of elk country. It's a big camp out. Shoot your fingers off all weekend. I think it's one of the coolest events in the country for sure. We'll take a lot of video of that while we're there.
It's one of the things that my kids look forward to the most throughout the year.
Nice.
It's a good time. Okay, well, that's all we got for today. We'll see you guys next time.
Conscious mind can only drive one activity at a time. The activity it needs to be driving at the end of your shot is increasing tension. Anytime our mind moves away from increasing tension to release the arrow, it's not thinking about tension, and it creates really bad things in your shot. 1/8 of an inch in a little cave-in in your front arm causes, believe it or not, 4 to 8 inches of a miss at 20 yards. So you can imagine what it is at 30 to 40. After 6 years of mental anguish trying to figure out an idea how to put a release trigger in the grip that was actually activated by increasing tension, we came up with this little idea. Pressure activates a both tactile and audible click. Because I don't care who you are, you're going to get over-involved in aiming. When you get over-involved in aiming, you're not thinking about how to finish your shot. This little thing promotes the idea of shooting a shot in increasing tension to a follow-through position. It's that simple.